Good morning, Australia. This is Chris Smith. Well, the top 5 could be the top 25 today. Busy news day. Victorian Labor is facing a leadership showdown at 10 a.m. with the Premier, Jacinta Allan, under all kinds of pressure, and it looks like her deputy, Ben Carroll, will be the first to challenge for the job when the meeting gets together in about 55 minutes. The leadership battle comes after months of pressure on the Allan government, with Labor facing voter backlash over issues including debt, cost pressures, crime, scrutiny about major infrastructure, and of course refusing to call a Royal Commission into the CFMEU was the last straw. Her supporters argue she is being undermined by the same factional forces that helped shape Labor's internal power struggle for years, while others say it is just time. New polling has delivered a major blow, with 71% of voters reportedly dissatisfied with her performance. That's about as bad as it gets. And as for Ben Carroll, he served as Education Minister and Deputy Premier. He is positioning himself as an alternative to save the furniture in November at the state election. Now, it's not as easy as it might sound, because today's vote might simply lead to a month-long drawn-out process which could require a vote of the entire Labor membership of Victoria. Yes, that's the way it works, thanks to party reforms established by Kevin Rudd in 2013. So we'll keep our eyes on that at 10 o'clock for you. Now, the New South Wales Liberals, meanwhile, they're under all sorts of scrutiny, with separate ICAC investigations examining allegations of factional influence, secret payments, attempts to use political connections for personal gain. One investigation has focused on claims involving Catholic Schools New South Wales, with ICAC hearing companies linked to Liberal operatives Jeremy Greenwood and Christian Ellis receiving $265,000 through alleged sham lobbying invoices. The inquiry heard the payments were allegedly used by the Conservative Reformers faction to recruit members and strengthen its influence within the party. It's also heard explosive text messages referencing filthy schools money, followed by another message saying, "Don't put that in writing, too late." ICAC has also heard allegations involving Sydney developer Jean Nassif and his company Top Place, with claims 3 New South Wales Liberal figures were linked to a $2 million arrangement aimed at benefiting the accused fraudster and challenging government decisions affecting his business interests. He was even taped saying Premier Dominic Perrottet was his boy. The case resumes today. Australians, brace yourselves for higher petrol prices as the Albanese government looks at building Australia's first new oil refinery in more than 60 years to strengthen the nation's fuel security. Work that out. On one hand, you've got Anthony Albanese being forced to entertain another oil refinery. And then on the other hand, they're shutting down, with, of course, the states, particularly the Labor states, more coal-fired power stations. Talk about going in two different directions. The Treasurer says the longer the conflict in the Middle East drags on, the greater the consequences for inflation and economic growth. But the federal and WA governments will jointly fund a $4 million pre-feasibility study into an oil refinery. They don't need a pre-feasibility study. If you want to have sovereign control, if you want to supply your own oil at times when oil is scarce because of international conflicts, just build the thing. Build it. Fresh details have emerged about one of Australia's most notorious ISIS figures, exposing the network of extremists surrounding former Dr. Tariq Kamla, including links to a fugitive terrorist accused of running a brutal female terror unit. Now, Kamla, known as Dr. Jihadi, is currently imprisoned in Baghdad, awaiting trial after joining Islamic State. But new reporting has revealed his connection to Kadra Essa, the sister of his fourth wife, yes, fourth, and an alleged ISIS commander, is wanted by the FBI over a $5 million, that's US dollars, kidnapping plot. US authorities allege Essa led ISIS's female Nasaba Karabar battalion, which enforced brutal Sharia law, conducted military training and encouraged violence, including suicide operations. She remains on the run with a $5 million reward offered for information leading to her capture. These are those that he associates with, Tariq Kemlar. He should never be allowed in Australia again. In sport, well, the West Tigers have found themselves back in familiar territory. Controversy, questions and pressure, this time after a reported fallout between coach Benji Marshall and halfback Adam Doueihi. Doueihi was reportedly unhappy after being told he had to start at lock against Canberra. He threw his toys out of the cot, refused to play. They had a meeting yesterday, and I played you a little bit of what the CEO had to say. He doesn't want anyone to talk about what went on in the meeting. But it'll be interesting to see who won the peace talks, because if he selected at halfback Doueihi today, you can bet that Benji Marshall has had to back down. We'll see where he is selected. So, that is the state of play. In the Castle of Common Sense, we invite all lords and nobles to step forward and hold court on the open line. Feel free to set the agenda or argue your point. No heads will be lost. Call 13 12 69. On the guest list this morning, this is a special guest and is one of the most respected anthropologists in Great Britain. I've been wanting to talk with this fellow for quite some time. But what makes Professor Gwythian Prinz even more newsworthy is that he is currently shaking the climate doomsdayers like they have never been shaken before, and he's taking them to task over their dodgy scientific forecasts. Do not miss part one of my interview with Professor Prinz. It could make you think very differently about what we're being fed by our government over global boiling. Libertarian John Ruddick is on deck today to talk about ICAC's gotcha tapes on the New South Wales Liberal Party, the latest numbers on One Nation's dominance, and the Islamic influence on federal Labor. We'll also talk about the luxury taxpayer-funded hotel for Queensland politicians, a kind of Hotel California, according to columnist Mike O'Connor, who'll be on the program. And we'll get to Forbes in the central west of New South Wales later, where the local council is making a huge pitch to city slickers who are doing it tough financially. They are encouraging people to take a financial gap year in Forbes along the beautiful Lachlan River. Mayor Phyllis Miller will join us to make her case a little bit later. That and more on the show. 13 12 69 is the telephone number. This is Chris Smith on 2SM and the Super Radio Network. You know, there's an undeniable power shift occurring beneath the surface of Australian politics, and the mainstream media is scrambling to understand it. For months, we've watched the major political machines express shock and frustration as support flows towards One Nation. They try to dissect her policy documents, looking for answers in the fine print, but they don't know how to handle it, so they attack her policies and mock her followers. Wrong, wrong, wrong. And so today, an unprecedented poll carried out by Redbridge Group Accent Research has finally exposed the real truth. It is actually not policy details driving this massive groundswell, no matter what you read. It is the raw, unvarnished personality of Pauline Hanson herself. I bet this makes sense to voters today, but it doesn't make sense to the MPs who are trying to bring her down. The survey confirms that formal policy platforms has very little to do with the public's growing alignment with One Nation. Instead, the surge is fuelled entirely by deep-seated anti-major party sentiment and a profound personal regard for Hanson's authenticity. Authenticity, often the antithesis of over-varnished modern Australian politicians. It's true. The public is completely exhausted by the manufactured, focus group-tested politicians who populate the major parties. People are tired of the broken promises, the polished evasions, and the absolute lack of conviction from leaders who seem to stand for nothing but their own re-election. In contrast, Pauline Hanson stands out like a beacon of blunt honesty. Now, according to this data, the principal reason voters are deserting the Labor government is a sense of betrayal over broken tax promises in the federal budget. Makes sense. Meanwhile, the coalition is bleeding massive chunks of its traditional base, with more than 10% of its vote flooding directly to One Nation and Pauline Hanson. When those voters were asked why they left the coalition, they explicitly stated that the major parties are simply too similar and lack any real direction. So much for the disastrous direction taken by Malcolm Turnbull and a litany of Liberal Party officials to be Labor light. That has backfired catastrophically. And this is exactly where Hanson's unique appeal becomes a massive political asset. As political analysts have noted, her base views her as the ultimate anti-establishment outsider. She's perceived as a political wrecking ball against a broken system that ordinary Australians feel no longer works for them and their families. Hanson speaks the language of the dinner table. She talks about the crushing strain that high immigration levels place on everyday housing and the cost of living. Practical realities that everyday people face, while the Canberra elite remain completely detached and, of course, obsessed with ideological issues. Nobody accuses Pauline Hanson of telling smooth political lies. If anything, she routinely lands in hot water precisely because she is too forthright about what she truthfully believes in. And that seems to be part of her attraction. In a political landscape defined by insincerity, that level of fearlessness is incredibly refreshing. Her steadiness stands in sharp contrast to the confusion and lack of conviction displayed by the establishment. The message to Canberra has never been louder. Voters want someone genuine. They want a fighter who isn't afraid to disrupt the status quo, which is why the latest Demos Oz poll has an alliance of One Nation and the coalition winning the next federal election. Pauline Hanson has proved to a once sceptical public that she is the real deal and the rest is simply fake. And we've got a development in this leadership challenge occurring at 10 o'clock in Victoria. It looks as if a deal has been done to remove Jacinta Allen. So this may not be drawn out for another month to allow the membership to have a vote, because at 9:30, in about 11 minutes' time, Jacinta Allen will face the media. Maybe she's been convinced just before this meeting that she needs to prevent further hurt and hemorrhage on the party and step down right away, so that come 10 o'clock, there is an exchange of leadership and Ben Carroll becomes the new leader of the Victorian Labor Party. I'm only presuming, I don't know for sure, but Jacinta Allen will address the media shortly. Yes, the Victorian political media are now reporting that she's taken the hint that Jacinta Allen will announce in 7 minutes' time that she will not stand for the leadership of the party. So the numbers have spoken, which in many ways should have happened yesterday when a group of MPs went to her and said, you've got to stand down. But she dug her heels in, saying that she will accept the challenge and take it on. Well, the party in Victoria, being so far behind the Liberal Party, do not need further hemorrhaging. They need to be strengthened if they have any chance of winning the November poll. So there you go. One question is interesting, though. Ben Carroll, Deputy Premier. One of the reasons why Jacinta Allen was so on the nose was that there was this incredible evidence around major infrastructure projects which implicated the CFMEU, and she refused to call the Royal Commission into the CFMEU. That was the final straw. So does Ben Carroll, as Premier today, call for a Royal Commission against one of the biggest backers of the Labor Party? We will see. Wayne, good morning.
Oh, yes, good morning. James Patterson, in a speech a couple of days ago, might have been late last week, chose to attack One Nation, Pauline Hanson's cultural policy. And, yeah, now, it's interesting that he could have took the opportunity to attack the Labor government's immigration policy, which is part of the assault on our our traditional Australian culture. But he chose instead to attack One Nation. What an idiot. But anyway.
Well, this is why so many in the Liberal Party have got the strategy wrong. You heard what the poll said today as I addressed at the start of the program. This is authenticity. It's not necessarily and just her immigration policy. It is authenticity. Now, what you've got to do when you know that a huge chunk of your own supporters have gone to One Nation is not start bashing them up, bash the government up. And there's plenty to bash them up about.
And the people in your party, who apparently there's so many of them still, that it's like their energy policy. They say they don't want to do net zero anymore, but they just can't quite get out of the Paris.
That's right.
Board.
It's like being half pregnant, Wayne.
Yeah, and it's the same with this policy that they want to bring down immigration, but they just can't quite abandon multiculturalism. Now, the way for Pauline Hanson ahead, she may not be able to explain herself or in the best of words and stuff, especially when asked a whole lot of different questions. You can't be over, and people, you can't be over everything all the time when you're by yourself and understaffed.
Yeah. There's a lot to that, by the way. Before you just pass over that, this party is unlike any other. It is a minor party made up of a skeleton staff. This is so true. When you start comparing staffers, advisors, media people attached to each and every MP within the Liberal Party and the National Party, it overshadows anything able to be stood up in One Nation. They just simply don't have the number of seats which dictates that kind of support. It's a tiny party.
Yeah. Now the thing is that the control freak in James Paterson and every other politician on both the Coalition and the Labor Party is that the first thing that springs into their mind is, how are you going to force people to do this? How are you going to force the monoculture on people, which is an interesting insight into how they think. But all One Nation's got to do, or this is what I would do, you go back to 1973 or 74 or 75, whenever multiculturalism came in, and you look into the government legislation and procedures and stuff, and you just stop doing the things they started to do.
Well, true. And under Malcolm Fraser, whether we like it or not, he brought people in from parts of the Middle East without any scrutiny whatsoever, and this brought some dark shadows into our suburbs, and that has only continued.
I'll tell you, you might want to put your hand on the pause button for this, but a few years ago there was some scandal about apartment buildings in Sydney having cracks and stuff, and remember that? They were deemed One of my neighbours is a carpenter, and he does top-end renovations and stuff, and I said to him, what's the problem? Don't we have inspections and stuff? How could this possibly happen? And he said there's a 3-word answer: Lebanese building contractors.
Right. Yes, I should put the button on that, Wayne. We've got no evidence of that. That is clear hearsay from you, but I'm quite happy to get your call anyway. Thank you very much for all of that. Let's have a look at the power sources for this morning. Okay, 7:30 is the time at which we did our measurement, thanks to AEMO, the Australian Energy Market Operator. Batteries were giving us the grand total of 5% power, hydro 5%, solar 0. That's at 7:30 this morning. Wind 29%, a windy start to the day across various parts of the nation. But coal, once again, 58%. And talking about coal, the world's appetite for coal, we learned today, is growing, but Australia is facing pressure to walk away from its biggest export industries. This is economic suicide. While Asian nations, China in particular, continue to rely on coal-fired power, Australia's coal sector warns it risks losing a major economic advantage as mines face tighter regulations, expiring approvals and potential closures. Now, the International Energy Agency, according to the Telegraph today, says global coal consumption has defied predictions it would decline, with demand expected to rise again in the coming year. Of course, because so many nations have realised they can't rely on windmills and solar panels. They want 24/7 baseload power, and that comes from coal cheaply. That's why. But in New South Wales, major coal operations face an uncertain future. Around 85% of New South Wales coal is exported overseas, which generates this massive $26.7 billion. But what are we doing? We're shutting places like Ashton, Mount Arthur and Mangoola coal-fired power stations before the end of the decade. South Korea wants coal. Japan wants coal. Taiwan wants coal. India wants coal. Vietnam wants coal. Bangladesh wants coal. The Philippines want coal. So the debate now is whether Australia should continue supplying a resource the world still wants or accelerate away from an industry that has delivered billions in exports because of ideological issues. And it's like the tail wagging the dog, the way our energy policy is set up in this country. Okay, it's just gone 9:30. No sign of Jacinta Allan, but all signs are that she will stand down in a statement to the press in Parliament House. They are all ready to have her stand in front of the podium. I just noticed, I tell you what, I've got flags. I'll tell you the flags behind Jacinta Allan. She's taken a page out of the Anthony Albanese book. There is the Victorian flag. There is the Australian flag. There is the Indigenous flag. And there is the Torres Strait Islander flag. When we're winning golds and medals at the Commonwealth Games, I don't see all these flags. I see one flag. I see the Australian flag. Maybe Jacinta Allan and Anthony Albanese would be upset that all the other flags aren't on show at the Commonwealth Games. We are represented in our entirety by one flag. I wish some of these politicians would get that through their head. Okay, now Sky News is got all focus on the podium at Parliament House in Spring Street. We're expecting Jacinta Allan any second now, and the tip is that she will stand down to avoid a month-long hemorrhaging of the party, and that Ben Carroll will walk into the caucus meeting at 10 o'clock in about 25 minutes' time as the new Premier by overwhelming numbers. And the numbers have spoken, obviously, and Jacinta Allan has woken up today saying, I won't do this to the party. If we've got any chance of winning in November, there's got to be a handover, not a fight. But still no sign of Jacinta Allan. Now, this could be because she's just running late. It could be because she's got some last-minute instructions or something similar. But now she's turned up. Let's go there live, courtesy of Sky.
Now, you might need to stop that so I can see over the flashes. Good morning. Now, thank you for joining us here this morning. Yesterday, Mum sent me a message that just said, hang in there, Jacinta. My whole life, Mum taught me to never give up. Dad, he always taught me to do the right thing. Recently, I've reflected on how deeply how these two lessons have shaped me, and on the fact that they don't always point in the same direction. After speaking with my colleagues overnight, I've made the difficult decision to step aside as leader of the Victorian State Parliamentary Labor Party and as Premier of Victoria. I will shortly chair a caucus meeting to elect a new leader. Should Ben Carroll emerge as our next Labor leader and Labor Premier, he will have my congratulations and unqualified support. I am making this decision because it is the right thing by the Labor Party and by the Victorian people. I was prepared to put my record and my plan to a ballot of members, as our rules allow. I believe I would have won. But doing so this close to an election takes up valuable resources, including the most precious of one, time. More importantly, it puts the state in a position of uncertainty. That hurts the Victorian people and I just won't do that. At the end of the day, I am, and always have been, a team player. The most important thing I want to say today is thank you. Thank you. Thank you to the Victorian people. It has been the honour of my life to serve you as your Premier. I stepped down after 1,036 days in this role. Not one of them wasted, not one of them easy. And let's be honest, this gig has been tough. But let's be clear, the average working family has it tougher. They're the ones managing interest rate rises. They're the ones living in a housing crisis and facing economic change that no one can predict. They're the people I always put first. I got into politics to fight for them, and whatever I do next, I will still be fighting for them. I leave immensely proud of what we have achieved these past 3 years. I inherited a rising crime rate. My team and I toughened bail laws, started adult time, introduced the Violence Reduction Unit. Crime is now falling for the first time since COVID. I inherited a budget deficit. My team and I made savings whilst always protecting frontline services. The budget today is now in surplus. I came to office in a cost of living crisis. Making life easier and more affordable became my mission. We not only made public transport free for kids, we not only made public transport free during a fuel crisis, we made public transport free for kids forever. We cut car rego for 3.5 million people. And we doubled food relief so families could have the dignity of a meal. And we're making working from home a right that your boss can't take away. Along the way, we delivered the biggest cost of living help there is: strong public schools, strong public hospitals, strong public services. And it all starts with building 121 new schools, 12 new hospitals. We've removed 92 level crossings, finished the Westgate Tunnel. We're building the North East Link and the Suburban Rail Loop. And then there's the Metro Tunnel. Not too many people get to see a project of this size and scale through from the start to the end. I am so goddamn proud of it. Right now there's 5 underground stations, 1,200 weekly services that's taking Victorians to hospitals and universities. That's why we build. And they are not just projects, they are assets that will improve our lives. The Liberals opposed them. Now they're trying to rewrite history again by saying they're tainted or somehow a waste. Victorians won't buy that. They just want to see a doctor sooner, enrol a child easier, and get home from work faster. That's why we've invested in schools and hospitals, roads and public transport. Liberals talk about debt. Well, that's what it's paid for. You can't have great services without great workers. There's our nurses and midwives, teachers and police, and so many more. We've hired 17,000 more nurses and gave them a record pay rise. We made our police force the biggest in the country and gave them a record pay rise. We've hired thousands and thousands more teachers and we've put a record pay rise on the table for them too. Why? Because all of them have earned it. Decent wages, decent jobs, that's what Labor governments deliver. An economy that works for working people. Backed by free TAFE, the new SEC Apprenticeship Academy. Under Labor, more than 500,000 jobs have been created here in Victoria since 2020. Our economy has grown faster than any other state. There are more cranes in the sky today than at any other time during my premiership. These are the sorts of things the business lobby groups will never tell you about. Melbourne's a great city. It's the best in the world, multicultural and proudly so. Home to a Grand Prix and a Grand Slam and an NFL regular season game. But if you asked me what sets Victoria apart, it's our regional cities, and I am so proud to call one of them home. Only Labor governments invests in our regions and our regional people. We've delivered regional rail, regional hospitals, regional schools, new industries, new trains. Labor governments have built up the regions. And today, it means that my kids have the opportunity in their community that I didn't have when I grew up in Bendigo. That's what I'm proud of. I'll never forget the day the Liberal Party assembled a protest in Brighton the day I was announcing my housing affordability plan. That was the day the Liberal Party picked a side in the housing crisis, the wrong side. Today, Victoria is approving and completing and building more homes than any other state. And as a result, it's now more affordable to buy or rent in Melbourne than any Australian capital. That was the point. And in 2026, that's what people want. I said getting millennials into homes would be the fight of my life. That fight is incomplete. But my reforms are no longer a dream. They are the law. Removing these laws an inch and you make housing more expensive. It's that simple. Now, there's so much more I want to talk about. Australia's strongest anti-hate laws. Australia's first treaty with its First Peoples. But I want to finish on women's health. I'm a woman, I'm a mum. I've lived with endometriosis and I almost lost my daughter at birth. You all know I'm a bit of a crier. So these experiences not only defined who I am, they defined what I believe government should do for working women. For too long, women's pain was dismissed. I was one of those women. I was just a girl. And if I want to be remembered for one thing, it's this. I led a government. I led a government that listened to girls about their health. Tens of thousands of you wrote in. And we opened 15 women's health clinics across the state. We've rolled out the green whistle for pain relief free of charge. And you can get the pill at the chemist without having to pay to see a GP. And if your child is sick in the middle of the night, you can now visit Australia's first virtual emergency department. It's free with no wait from their bed. This is what happens when women are heard. I'm proud to be Victoria's second female Premier. And there have absolutely been moments when it's been hard and it's been personal. But the chance to make a difference was worth it. And if you're a woman making your start in politics, let me say this to you today. Please don't look at what I have experienced this week and think, stuff that, I don't want to be involved. Look at the support I've experienced over my career and think, I can make a difference here too. And if you want to make a difference in politics, you've got to get up and fight. And I am a fighter. I've always fought for my family's Labor values. For my dad, the Sparky, who Jeff Kennett sacked. For my brother, the nurse, saving lives. And for families just like mine across Victoria who rely on a job to get ahead. I fight for working class families. It's in my blood. And I would have absolutely relished the fight this November. I was more than ready. I saw off 2 Liberal leaders. Now I expect my successor will see off the 3rd. And if they don't, One Nation certainly will. And that remains the biggest risk at this election. a One Nation Liberal coalition government that will cut $40 billion from our hospitals and our schools. And how do we know the Liberals will do this? It's what they believe, not because they don't understand what public services do, but because they don't believe that every Victorian is equally entitled to them. Politics can be complex sometimes, but that's the simple difference. And for whoever is lucky enough to lead the Labor Party, that will always be the difference. Now let me turn to some thanks. Thank you to my amazing staff, led by my Chief of Staff, Damien Karmelich. Most of what they do is never seen publicly. The long nights, the hard calls. Thank you all of you, for bringing an enormous sense of duty to your jobs and for making me better at mine. Thank you to my ministers for your counsel, to my caucus colleagues for your friendship, and thank you to my union comrades and colleagues for your solidarity. Thank you to the 3 Labor premiers under whom I've served. Steve Bracks, who taught us to listen and act. John Brumby, who taught us to fight for the regions. And Daniel Andrews, who taught us to put people first. Finally, thank you to my husband Yorick and our beautiful children Peggy and Cormac. If this job was hard for me, it was 10 times harder for them. Now, a bit of a message to the kids. Mum will be home more to tell you to get off your computers, go and clean your room. I will now also be there for all your drama performances and all of our family holidays without having to leave early. My greatest joy is spending time with you, and I can't wait for it. There are so many more people I want to thank from my earlier days, but I'm sure you will allow me to say that that's a speech I want to give in my hometown of Bendigo. I finish by saying once more, thank you to the Victorian people. You brought me into your workplaces, into your homes, into your places of worship. You spoke to me about your hopes and fears and frustrations, and every day I listened. I didn't achieve all I set out to do for you in this role. I didn't get everything right. But I will leave knowing I made a difference, fighting for working families, making life easier, safer, more affordable, as one part of a proud Labor team. Thank you and goodbye.
OK, she's taking no questions. Jacinta Allan bowing out, so it will be a smooth transition despite her obstinate attitude to resigning late yesterday. And it was a speech written and spoken by an outgoing Premier, all right, and flying the flag for what she achieved over that time. But her approval rating publicly was as bad as any we have seen from Premiers both in Queensland, New South Wales and also Victoria. And she couldn't distance herself from Dan Andrews, and she couldn't distance herself from the crimes of the CFMEU, her greatest donor, and she couldn't distance herself from incredible debt that is being racked up by the Victorian government. Just a reflection on what we've just heard from Jacinta Allan. There were many, many references she made to gender. I got the feeling it was a dig at the party for dumping her as a woman. She made those messages to women about them not being deterred by what she's been through this week. It was a very gender-focused acceptance speech, acceptance of the inevitable. Almost like pitching herself as the next Premier in many ways, the way she spoke about what she achieved. But look, she had no numbers publicly and she had no numbers internally, and the corruption of the big build in Victoria took the breath away of those who care about tackling corruption. And she would not call a Royal Commission into their greatest donor, the CFMEU, and that was the greatest failure. Let's go to Shirley's call on Jacinta Allen. Go ahead, Shirley.
Oh, good morning, Chris. Look, if she's so good, why are people against her? And secondly, she told a budget fib because she said the deficit she inherited is now overcome, but Victoria has the highest spending budget deficit ever.
Yeah, per capita, the worst in the nation. Not only that, her preferred premiership number was just appalling. Jess Wilson from the Libs was on 51. She was on 32. And her dissatisfaction was 71% in the latest news poll.
This is the point. I can't understand. Why are people against her then? Do you know?
Well, one of the reasons, as I mentioned, is they called for a royal commission into the filthy corruption involving the CFMEU, and she wouldn't do it. And it harks back to the old days of Dan Andrews, where he looked after his union crooked mates to the death.
Yeah.
And the Victorian public have had a gutful of this kind of rapport between the unions and the Labor government. And I think we're going to see a change in government come November in Victoria. Anyway, we'll see what the new leader can do for the ALP. So as we've been covering in the last half hour, and covering at length, by the way, because that was a long speech, it was about 20 minutes long, in which she went through just about everything she achieved as the Premier. She has resigned as the Premier. There is a meeting going on now. The MPs, the Labor MPs, have come into the caucus room a short time ago, and we're expecting a new Premier of Victoria very, very shortly. Let's go to some callers before I get to John Ruddick on this topic and others. There's plenty to talk about today. Tim from Ngambie in Victoria. Go ahead, Tim.
Morning, sir. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Good to get your call.
Well, I've spoken to you about small business before, but nothing's changed this morning except for the face. That's all that's changed. Most all of it that she said this morning is rubbish. Absolute rot.
Well, you're in the state. You've been able to monitor her better than I could from New South Wales. She was trumpeting her achievements and talking about gender a lot and what she brings for women and what women should be thinking about when they see her demise today, etc. She was playing the gender card to the nth degree, wasn't she?
Look, when you talk to this is all made up in their head. For God, jeez. When you talk to people on the ground, and I talk to a lot of people because of the nature of my business and things like that. I do security doors, and it's just I have not come across anybody, and I do an hour and a half radius from my home. I've not come across anybody that's supporting anything that they've said. The state is broken, Chris.
Yeah,
mess. And the small business is going broke. A fortnight ago, I took an $8,000 hit.
Yeah.
People had placed orders, 3 jobs, and then they've decided that they just can't afford it and they've got to sell up.
Yeah, this is where we have a state where living standards have plummeted. I know this has happened across Australia, but nowhere worse than in Victoria.
And the crime statistic, what world is she living in? You can't leave. You've got to keep everything locked up, even in the country. They're trying to come into your home while you're at home, even in the country. Everything she said is a load of rot. What annoys me the most, Chris, is you have people like Mr. Prime Minister in Canberra, spends over $120 million on journalists and the other thing I won't mention, right? But we got potholes. We've got the largest array of 50-year-old women who are homeless, the homeless people.
Fix up the basics. Stop paying media to be the media.
My wife always says, get back to basics. Well, hey, it all went to left-wing media, mate. You didn't get any of that friggin' $60-odd million, I'll grant you that.
No, that didn't happen for us. Tim, I've got to get to as many callers as I can, but thank you very much for calling from Victoria. Michael in Homebush. Go ahead, Michael.
Hey, Chris. Look, I'm fired up after hearing all these lies about what a wonderful job she did. She inherited a shocking state of affairs from Daniel Andrews.
Yep.
I feel sorry for the people in Victoria. My wife and I used to travel there regularly when our son was based there with one of the banks.
But, Michael, she could have done a lot about that. She could have stopped the continuation of pandering to unions, especially unions who commit crimes. She could have changed that paradigm. She could have also said we've got to pull our heads in like we've never pulled our heads in before because we were in shocking debt and your living standards are falling. But no, she spent like a drunken fool.
That's correct, and I'm pleased you brought up the fact about the Royal Commission. The corruption is just absolutely out of control, and the money the Victorians paid, well, we all paid for giving the Commonwealth Games away. We're a joke. I feel sorry for the Australian public, not just for the Victorians, for us.
Well said, Michael. Thank you. And Simon wants to make a comment about Jacinta Allen. Go ahead.
G'day, Chris. I think she's could sell ice to the Eskimos. I think she's quite a good talker and quite likeable. That's just my opinion. And I think it could favour Jess Wilson, her departure, unless they can work in tightly with Mike Bush, the police commissioner, and really get on top of this youth crime.
Well, youth crime's out of control. I don't know what numbers she's referring to, but anyone that I speak to who lives in the suburbs of Melbourne, they are more fearful for their own possessions in their lives than I have ever come across. Now, I lived and worked in Bendigo for many, many years, and I enjoyed Victoria. But that was at a time when crime was nothing like it is today, and I think Victorians have a genuine fear of, surviving through all of this at the moment.
Yeah, Mike Bush has got 560 on his radar, all strategically placed, and he knows exactly their names, and they've only convicted like 20% of them.
Yeah.
So it's real, and
it's real, all right.
I think it's going to favour. I think it's going to favour. This result's going to favour the opposition, Jess Wilson.
Okay, Simon, thank you very much for your call. The leader of the New South Wales Libertarian Party, also an upper house MP in the state parliament, is John Ruddock. He joins me now. John, another one bites the dust.
Now, Chris, my line, can you hear me okay? My line's not perfect.
I can hear you clearly.
Oh, right, okay. Well, look, about the Jacinta Allen thing, I'm going to be the first person in Australia. Victoria is going to bounce back and become great again. Now, it's in a really bad spot right now. This is not a normal sort of, bad economy. It's not just the economy and people leaving the state of brain drain. It's also very bad street crime levels. Now, that's a bad, bad sign. Now, how did we get to this position in Victoria? Okay, so in the Labor Party, there's two groups. There's left-wing Labor and there's right-wing Labor. Now, right-wing Labor, people like Chris Minns and Bob Carr and Steve Bracks, used to be down there, they sort of don't really believe in anything. They just want to be in Parliament. They're probably from a working class area, so they say, I'll join the Labor Party, right? Now, they can be okay. Often they're bad, but they can be okay. Now, the left-wing Labor Party people are the real true believers. They're basically Greens, but they thought, I probably won't get into Parliament through the Greens, but I am a true believer. Okay, now this is what this Labor government has been like in Victoria, starting with Dan Andrews, and the next one's going to also be a left-wing Labor Party person. Now, these left-wing Labor Party people hate the private sector. They do not like business. They don't like big business. They don't like small business.
Well, they don't understand it either.
Yeah, and it's the private sector that keeps the whole ship afloat. The government and the public servants are parasites of what the entrepreneurs and the workers, the real wealth that they create. And so what we've had now for well over 10 years in Victoria, a cornerstone of Australia. In 1840, so just before they found gold, the population of Victoria was about 10,000 people. By 1880, so a very short period of time afterwards, it's bigger than Sydney, and it's got the highest living standards in the world, and it was the largest British city outside of Britain itself. So Melbourne has had, and we've seen this story before, people your age and my age, Chris, in the 1990s, Labor government, left-wing Labor government, Joan Kirner, they also crashed Victoria, and that was bad for Victoria and bad for the rest of the country.
John Cain, you mean? John Cain.
Thank you. Yes, John Cain. And then remember old Mrs. Kerner, Joan Kerner, she was a piece of work. Then we had the great Jeff Kennett, okay, who came along and kicked the place into action. Now, he was a very, very, very good state leader. Now, I believe the Liberals are going to win this election. Now, the more One Nation lower house members there, though, the better. Okay, because I'm thinking those Victorian Liberals can be they're very much these modern Liberals, moderate Liberals. Okay, so if they've got a decent One Nation, they'll be probably in minority, but they can say, hey, Liberals, don't stray too far here. So we really want the One Nation people to say things like, well, we'll support you, we'll give you confidence in supply, but we want to end all the global warming BS, something like that. Yeah. End the trans BS, half the size of the public sector, whatever.
Okay, on one side of politics today, we had the Labor Party on its knees in Victoria, but in New South Wales, in the lead up to a March state election, the evidence presented to ICAC so far this week, and soon to continue for 2 months, is brutally hurtful. It is a political thriller, John, with secret phone taps, code names, blackmail allegations, and even the laundering of money. What do you make of it?
Okay, so this is every couple of years we get the ICAC Hollywood new blockbuster release with all these things you say, all the leaks to the Sydney Morning Herald. The Sydney Morning Herald is the PR agency of ICAC. In fact, the Sydney Morning Herald has very foolishly, on about 10 occasions in the last 2 weeks, they've said, sources within ICAC not authorised to speak to us have told us this. Okay, well, thanks for telling us that, Mr. Sydney Morning Herald. So that means people within the Anti-Corruption Commission are acting in a corrupt manner, leaking to the media about this. And the Sydney Morning Herald is stupid enough to tell us. Now, look, ICAC is expert at smearing people, okay, but this is the truth. Everyone out there in Australia is a free person to do whatever they want, except for when there is a law saying you can't do A, B and C or X, Y and Z. Now, barely anybody who gets smeared at ICAC ends up going to court and being found guilty.
True.
Now, Eddie Obeid's one example, but I'll tell you something I heard just the other day, and I had to double-check it yesterday, and it's true. Gladys got in trouble at ICAC. Now, she didn't even go to court. They just said she's corrupt, but they didn't take her to court. So somebody has called her corrupt, even though the cops didn't even take it to court. They didn't even charge her. Okay, so that's how not corrupt she is. Okay, but what about her boyfriend, Daryl Maguire? Gee, he got slammed all over the media. Everyone said, oh, he's the new Eddie Obeid. Well, what I didn't know, Chris, and all the listeners, this is really important. And I'm not a fan of old Daryl. I could tell you that from my time in the Liberal Party. But Daryl did go to court, and Daryl got entirely exonerated, and they basically gave it the media didn't want to talk about it. This is after they told us how terrible he is. Now, with this current investigation that's going on, okay, it all comes down to a little issue called branch stacking, okay, which is ugly process. But you know what they call branch stacking in Canada? We've got exactly the same political situation. People go around knocking on doors to say, oh, sign this membership form. And it's a public thing. They launch big door-knocking campaigns. Okay, well, that's what we call a branch stack. So it's just a different culture. Now, branch stacking is ugly. I wrote the book on how to stop it happening, okay, make the Liberal Party great again, but we won't go in there. So I'm not pro-branch stacking, but my point is this, Chris, there's no law against it, okay? It might be Liberal Party rules against it or whatever, okay? Well, that's a Liberal Party matter. It's not a criminal matter. So ICAC is just out here, once again, smashing into the Liberal Party with a few months to go before an election.
However, if you're dragging money from institutions like Catholic schools or Catholic churches to enable branch stacking, that's a different matter.
Well, okay, well, if that's true, and I don't believe it is, but that's the allegation that we've been hearing, if that's true, that is a matter for the Catholic schools. That is not a matter for the police or the law.
Just in addition to our discussion about Daryl Maguire, he didn't get off every charge, did he?
Yes, no, I did. Thank you. I need to make a correction. He got off. He was found not guilty on anything related to politics. Okay, all this stuff with Gladys and all that. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, he has been found guilty. So yes, I do need to correct this, viewers. He was involved in a migration visa scam that he was dodging up. It wasn't really to do. Okay, so look, as I said, I'm not mates with him.
No,
okay,
and a jury found him guilty of those.
He was found guilty of a visa scam, okay? But all the stuff that was all the headlines, him and Gladys and blah, 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 all that came to nothing.
Yeah. Now, still in New South Wales, and coal is king, we read today, in Asia and India, but in the state of New South Wales, we export 85% of our coal, but we're shutting down at least 3 major mines by the end of the decade. Are we stark raving mad, John Ruddick?
Oh, we are stark raving mad. Okay, absolutely, 100%. We're just completely crazy, and that's because we've been such a successful country. But now, if you go to many parts of the world, including many parts of Europe, and you talk to grandparents, people who lived around the time of World War II and the Great Depression, they remember hardship. Now, in this country, we didn't have a recession. Remember we broke the world record from about like 1992 till COVID. For about 30 years, Australia didn't have a recession, and no one had done it since the Dutch Republic in the 1600s or something. And so we've had it so good, and now what's happened is we fall for these really dumb things because we've put our guard down. First one was COVID mania, and the second is the global warming scam, which we seem to. But the good news about the global warming scam is this, Chris. The Sydney Morning Herald, my favourite newspaper, just a week ago had a poll saying. They asked people what they thought about. The question was something like, do you think we should keep relying on should we keep going down the road of renewables or should we bring back fossil fuels? Now, 43% of people said, no, let's go more fossil fuels. About 30% of people didn't know. They said they don't know, okay. 28% said, no, we need more renewables. And I'm thinking, okay, after 10 years of all the lies from Al Gore, all 20 years, all the lies from Al Gore and everything else about the global warming, and you've only got 28% of people. I mean, that's less than the amount of people that voted for The Voice.
Yeah.
And why is that? Because they promised us rising oceans and really hot winters, and there's still snow and everything else. So reality's got to have hope. This is if the Liberal Party collapses. This is one of the biggest reasons because they went along with it, and the Liberal Party voters and the Liberal Party members never went along with it.
Yeah, and in about 10 minutes' time on this program, I will speak with anthropologist and scientist Professor Gwynthian Prinz, who is pushing back in the UK against all these doomsday forecasts related to climate change and talking about CO2 in a very productive fashion. And he's in the news over there for doing this. He's publishing textbooks at the end of the year. And he's making waves. So we'll talk with him in about 10 minutes' time. Can I talk about the latest Demos Australian poll, which finds that if an election were held this week, an alliance of conservative parties, very similar to what is occurring in New Zealand, led strongly by One Nation, would become the government? The juggernaut seems unstoppable, John.
Well, look, when you add up the Liberal vote and the National vote and the One Nation vote, yes, you get over 50%. Okay, and then, of course, there's always a few other little votes. There's the mighty Libertarian vote.
Yeah.
Our preferences would go to them as well. Now, and Christian parties, shooters parties. So, this could be a very, 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 very good government. Now, the interesting thing is Now, if One Nation happens to have more members, let's say after the next election, One Nation has 45 members in the House of Representatives, and the Liberals and the Nationals have 35 seats in the House of Representatives. Well, that's 80 seats. That's government. But if One Nation's got more, and they might, that means they choose the Prime Minister. Now, that'll be fun and games.
Yes. But I noticed in Cairns yesterday, not everyone has a One Nation soft spot. One Indigenous man gave Pauline Hanson a gobful. Have a listen to this.
Aboriginal people. Now you're kicking the Muslims around. You're just a racist redneck with your red hair. Go away. Go back to Ipswich and your fish and chip shop. Disgraceful. You're a woman lacking moral fibre. You are intellectually dishonest and you're not welcome here.
You can't please everyone, John Ruddick.
Well, you can't please everyone. And look, welcome to democracy. You can't do that in Pyongyang. If you attack a public official like that in public, you get disappeared. So I don't like it, okay, but I support that man's right to say what he wants to say. That's where, if you really believe in free speech, you support it, and I disagree with everything he said. It was a nasty thing to say. I don't think Pauline's a racist at all.
All right, one last issue. On the Labor side of politics, we've seen the ALP conference over the weekend take a much softer approach towards the terror group Hamas. In fact, today, former Labor MP and Jewish leader Michael Danby accused his party of being under the influence of Islamists. And I'll tell you what, I had Danby on the program yesterday, and he told me this on the show.
He's happy with the conference because the socialist left got its way. The main thing, I suppose, I believe, Chris, is that the Labor Party has fundamentally changed from the days of Peter Walsh, Bob Hawke, Kim Beazley. Yeah. It's now controlled by what we call the socialist left. And it's not like Chris Minns. Chris Minns is a more, you can criticise him all you like, but it's a much more sensible government than the national government. And we're all going to be in trouble because, as you say, we're probably not just $1 trillion, but $2 trillion in debt.
And John Ruddick, this is why they now want and are happy for Hamas to rearm.
Well, look, I wasn't aware of that. I thought they might have used the word Palestinian. I'm not sure if they used Hamas. But look, either way, there is no doubt that the Australian Labor Party is now heavily influenced by pro-Palestinian issues. And exactly the same mirror image on the Liberal Party, it is influenced by pro-Israeli interests. Now, why is this happening in Australia? It's because Australia advertises to the world that we are an activist state on the global stage, that we want to go out there and throw our weight around. And what that means is that brings us enemies and it brings us friends on the planet. I think we should be more like Switzerland. Now, it also means internally interest in this country, and I say people in Australia are welcome to support any international cause they want to support. But I don't think our government should be neutral on these things. But because our government is not neutral, it means that activist groups in this country want to hijack our foreign policy. Yeah. And they want our foreign policy to be pro something overseas, whether it's Ukraine or China or Middle East.
But they need to keep their nose out of any kind of green lighting of a terrorist organisation. And what happened at the weekend is that the Australian Labor Party adopted a policy platform that dropped their previous explicit wording demanding that Hamas disarm. No longer is that a prerequisite relating to Hamas.
Well, look, as I said, I'm surprised if the Labor conferences are going on. I don't put it past them if they're using the actual word Hamas. Okay, so they could have achieved the same thing if they'd sort of just used the term Palestinian. So it's the polling all around the Western world, including the United States, is moving very fast towards, there used to be very, very, very one-eyed pro-Israel. That is changing all around the world in just the last couple of years, and that Labor is reflecting that.
Okay, I've got to leave you there, but thank you so much for giving us time, and thank you for a different time because we were waylaid by Jacinta Allen's longer defeat speech. But thank you very much, John Ruddick.
Good on you, Chris. Thanks, mate.
Good on you. The New South Wales leader of the Libertarian Party, John Ruddick, MLC. We will take a break, still waiting on the decision on whether Ben Carroll becomes the Premier of Victoria or not. As soon as we have those numbers, we'll get them for you. I doubt whether there is even a vote. Does he just take the mantle straight from the floor as opposed to any kind of vote against any other candidate? All right. Now, the man you're about to listen to is shaking up the scientific world in the Northern Hemisphere on the issue of climate change. And he's shaking it up like it's never been shaken up before. English professor Gwythian Prinz has teamed up with a group of other esteemed scientists and historians, and they're going to publish a book later this year on climate, energy and knowledge. And this book will debunk some of the first theories of climate science, which he says have since been proved wrong. Now, Prinz is an award-winning historian, economist, political lecturer, defence advisor and convener of the trailblazing Hartwell Group on Climate and Energy. And he's already publishing articles illustrating how recent climate evidence has reversed his previous views on climate alarmism, net zero, and the dangers of man-made CO2. I sat down with him for about 20 minutes. I've cut this interview up into two, and I'm going to play the first half today and the second half tomorrow. This is well worth listening to, and more than that, it is well worth sharing with others. The green Titanic, he now claims, has hit the iceberg of reality, and the obsession with decarbonisation over the past 25 years is a grand illusion and a distraction. I caught up with the Emeritus Professor in London recently. Professor Gwynthian Prinz, what an honour it is to have you with me right here. Thank you very much for your time.
It's reciprocal, Chris. I know about the power of your program.
Maybe underestimated at times, I can assure you of that. Do you believe that the planet is warming?
Yes, of course the planet is warming. Sometimes it's warming, sometimes it's cooling. We're coming out of the Maunder Minimum, the last little ice age, and so there's gradual warming going on. There's no question about that. On reputable temperature records, which means not records which have been artificially inflated by the heat island effect, such as is happening outside us here in London with the heat being reflected off the concrete. So, combination of Huntsville satellite records, yes, of course. We're in a warming recovery phase, but remember, the sun takes a holiday, and it's going to be due for another Maunder Minimum type rest, probably after I pop my clogs in the 2040s, and then we'll go into another cold phase.
So I establish from that sentence and that answer that you firmly believe in the cycles of life in terms of weather, as opposed to the dangerous impact of additional CO2.
Well, I changed the verb you used. This isn't a question of belief. Obviously, we have to take a lot on trust in life, but this is an area, and it's one I've worked in now for half my professional career, where I've gone through a process of gradual and sometimes shocked disillusionment, as I've discovered that scientists who've made strong assertions on the basis of their reputations turn out not to have been trustworthy. And we've seen this in the contamination of the temperature record, for example, which is what lies behind part of the question that you just mentioned. I mean, let's just take this hot period we're in at the moment. The rule of thumb is that the more extreme weather events, please note weather, not climate events, that we experience, the lower the likelihood of human agency. So what are the three things that we notice for the period of global warming that we have had since 2022, because it's been considerable? Do you know them?
No, I don't, but you're going to tell us.
I am. The first, and in many ways the most significant, was in January, 22nd of January 2022, off the island of Tonga, an underwater volcano blew. It's called Hunga Tonga Hunga Hapai. Mm-hmm. It had a volcanic eruption index of 6 out of 10. It was the most powerful volcano to explode on the planet since Krakatoa in 1883. And being underwater, it projected a column of water in the space of 2 or 3 days into the atmosphere. So powerful was it that water was injected through the stratosphere. Partly it went into the troposphere, where instantly it freezes and then circulates the globe. Water vapor in the atmosphere is the strongest global warming agent that there is.
Right.
And in the space of 4 days, HTHH increased the water content of the atmosphere by 10%. 1. 2. In 2022, there was, and the Australians are well familiar with this, an El Nino. It wasn't as strong as the one we are experiencing this year, but it was pretty strong. 3, the sun was moving in these regular cycles, 11-year cycles, towards the climax of solar cycle 25, which happened, by the way, just at the beginning of this year. So it was on the increase in its intensivity. So you put those three things together, and by simple economy of thought, you have got adequate explanation of major interventions into the global climate system, which is, remember, a deeply mysterious, complex adaptive system. It's self-organizing, it's buffering, self-buffering, otherwise life on Earth wouldn't work.
And separate from CO2.
Well, CO2, should we deal with CO2?
Let's deal with CO2. Is CO2 the dark creature that the catastrophists say it is?
Without carbon dioxide, we'd all be dead. Carbon dioxide is the food of life. It's the gas which feeds plants, and the plants feed the animals, and the animals feed us, and plants too. Now, the situation, we can be very precise about this, and by the way, for the same reason that we know about HTHH, we know now the correct scientific position to take on the negative role of carbon dioxide. It's because we now have substantial long runs of satellite data. Satellite data is pure, particularly pure. Now, let's just get a couple of things out of the way. First, the theoretical possibility of carbon dioxide warming the atmosphere is, of course, real. We've known this since Arrhenius published his famous paper in 1896 on the effect of carbonic acid in warming the temperature.
The question is by how much?
And whether you can actually determine it. Now, it's a much weaker global warming agent in the atmosphere than water vapour, which we just discussed with HTHH. Because that together produced this, I think, clearly this last 5 years where and we'll see where it goes, but after the end of this El Nino, it may well calm down again. But CO2 can have this effect, but the question is, do we know? Now, this sounds like a simple question, but it has a complicated answer, so bear with me for just a moment. A great deal of what the catastrophic narrative depends upon is an appeal to two things. One, the supremacy of science, which is turned into a god, so we put it into inverted commas, like Victor Borge with phonetic...
yes.
I can't remember which one he does for double inverted commas, so I won't do it on your program. But we have that. So we have the reification of science on the one hand, and then on the other hand we have 50,000 Frenchmen can't be wrong, which is the appeal to expertise, which says you do not have a degree in X, Y, or Z, and here are 50,000 people who do, and they all say that you're wrong, so ergo you must be wrong. Well, this is the same as Galileo in front of the Holy Inquisition. They all said he was wrong, and they were threatening to twist his balls, and he still maintained, and still it moves. So
you're an advocate against believing that just because 50,000 scientists tell us that we're being hurt so much by CO2, you're an advocate against that theory?
Yes, well, it's not a theory. The assertion cannot be demonstrated because, and very, very specifically, there are several pure data streams. I've mentioned one, which comes from satellites for temperature. But for carbon dioxide, as I expect you know, there is a particularly reliable and pure data source, which is the Mauna Loa Laboratory in the middle of the Pacific. And what does that tell us? It tells us that since 1970, something extraordinary has happened with carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. It has increased by about a third. My goodness, that sounds like an awful lot. Well, it's gone from 380 to whatever we are today. I think it's about 460. Carbon dioxide does not correlate. The increase of carbon dioxide does not correlate with the temperature record. There is no correlative demonstration on evidence from those two. So 460-70 is quite comfortable. But remember that from the core records, we know that when coal oil were being laid down in the prehistoric forests before gravity got to pressing it, concentration is about 30,000 parts per million. So we've got a long way to go.
We've got a long way to go. As a matter of fact, I remember speaking with one of the co-authors of the early IPCC report, Professor John Christie, who said to me, "Thank goodness, Chris, we are warming slightly and not going in the other direction."
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. A cold world, cold kills far more people than hot. But there is another side to this CO2 coin before we move on.
Yeah.
And that is that what can we say with scientific precision about the effect of carbon dioxide? Well, the answer, and this is satellite data, is that that surprising increase of 1/3 does correlate with something. It correlates with the greening of the planet. And in the last 25, 30 years, the planet has greened by about 15%. So, what we can say, as we sit here in a hot London, is the increase in carbon dioxide in the last 30 years has been a net benefit to mankind. If you dwell on that statement for just half a second, it means that Mayor Khan and his ultra-low emissions standards and the entire bureaucratic apparatus which says that the tax that I pay on my car is correlated to the amount of CO2 that comes out of the tailpipe. This is, as Jonathan Swift would have said, not just nonsense, it's nonsense on stilts.
I hope you found my conversation with Professor Gwythian Prinz interesting. I think he is a fascinating individual, one of the most forthright, unapologetic and respected anthropologists and scientists in Great Britain. And he's making huge waves and is intent on continuing to do so as he exposes climate alarmism. And tomorrow I'll play you part 2 of that conversation, and part 2 involves a real understanding from the professor about how much climate change is being catastrophised and the impact it's having on so many younger Brits and so many younger Australians, to the stage at which he's calling it a cult. And as he points out in the interview tomorrow, it is so difficult to deprogram people within a cult. But he says we have to do it. So he's one of the forthright experts on this, and we'll talk with Professor Gwythian Prinz, part 2, on the program tomorrow. Now, this particular Victorian Labor caucus meeting continues to go on. It's gone on for 52 minutes already. Now, the reason it's gone on longer than anyone had thought is because Ben Carroll is not the only one in that room with his hand up to lead the state. Jacinta Allen supporter and Attorney General Sonia Kilkenny is taking on Ben Carroll, according to those who are getting very, very direct text messages from inside the caucus meeting. So there's a battle on. It's not between Jacinta Allen and Ben Carroll. Jacinta has stood down from her position, but Sonia Kilkenny, a supporter of Jacinta Allen's, has decided that Ben Carroll should not get everything his own way. So no doubt there will be a vote in that meeting, and as soon as we know how that went, we'll tell you. But I would have thought, given how many MPs turned their backs on Jacinta Allen, that they're unlikely to start supporting an Allen supporter in Sonia Kilkenny. However, we'll get you an update when we can. You know, one of the things that irritates me most about governments, and I mean all governments, all parties, is the lack of transparency. And when it comes to the ISIS wives and the ISIS fighters, I sense a drastic lack of transparency. And this business about our government, we didn't assist them to come back into the country, rubbish. So could we now be paying, the government that is, to house returned ISIS wives? Well, the government, the federal government, won't say. They just won't tell us. The government has refused to rule out whether taxpayer-funded housing could be provided to these women who returned to Australia after living under Islamic State despite repeated questions. Now, the controversy follows comments from former AFP detective David Craig, who says he expects the women and their children will likely be housed by the government, arguing they should instead face strict control measures. including curfews, limits on electronic devices and restrictions on who they can associate with. You see, if they'd done what Mark Latham suggested and sent them to detention in Christmas Island, all of that could have been monitored. But now they're in the public and some of them have got bail. That's almost impossible. The debate comes as Home Affairs Minister Tony Burke says the government has already pushed its legal powers to the edges of what's possible. Well, David Craig thinks the government could go further, and I'll speak with David Craig later in the week. I'm in contact with him today, and I'll speak with him as this story develops, because what we're being told and what is actually going on behind the scenes in reference to the ISIS wives and those ISIS fighters who are being questioned and prosecuted in Iraq, I think are two different things. We're not being told the truth. I'm going to take a break. We'll get some news for you, a news update, and then also next hour on the show, I'm going to go to Forbes in the central west of New South Wales and talk about a new program that is enticing city folk to go on a financial gap year in the central west. If you think our politicians here are out of touch, have a listen to what's going on over in the United Kingdom. Comedian Katie Hopkins has just laid absolute boots into the new Prime Minister there, Andy Burnham, calling him Captain Casual for tossing around taxpayer-funded promises left, right and centre while everyday workers continue to get hammered. Doesn't that sound familiar?
I'm here outside number 10 North, and isn't it inspiring? I mean, really, it's about as auspicious as an Argos on an out-of-town industrial estate without the benefit of being able to get a free pencil. And here, Captain Casual, Andy Burnham and the Circle Jerks are busy applauding themselves walking into rooms and lining more people up to applaud in order that they can walk in and take the applause. Captain Casual has just finished at the Slug and Lettuce just down there, where he's been tasting bar snacks, because that's how you know he's one of us. He's got a black T-shirt on and he's tasting bar snacks and people are applauding him. Now, Casual Captain Andy and the Circle Jerks are throwing out policy at the moment like it's breadcrumbs, which is ironic because, of course, it is. Bread and circuses. Keep the people entertained. Keep announcing policies. God knows how you're going to fund any of it. All we want is oil and gas open, and we want our farmers' inheritance tax overturned, Burnham, and that's on you. I'm about to go in and ask for that very thing. And finally, of course, Andy Burnham, Billy Big Bollocks, Captain Casual and his Circle Jerks have decided that if they disagree with Trumpy Trump, they're going to let him know. Oh yeah, they're going to do it publicly. Oh my God, Trumpy Trump is quaking in his boots. I mean, there's Trump at the White House, having been elected by 80 million Americans, and there's Captain Casual and the Circle Jerks, who've been elected by precisely no one and are making policy announcements here at the Shite House. Donald Trump in the White House, Captain Casual and the Circle Jerks here in the Shite House. That's it for today here at number 10 North. Oh, it's so exciting. It's making my nipples itch. I just want to ask you one thing. Do have a look at when the rental agreement for this place was taken. Have a look at the date that these guys started letting number 10 North. That might give you an idea of just how much democracy there actually is here in the UK.
She's so on the front foot, she's actually outside number 10. How's that, eh? Katie Hopkins, taking it to the people, getting in the front line. Let's go to callers on 13 12 69. There's been way too much politics today, but maybe we can get some sense and sensibility out of our listeners. Peter in Kempsey. Go ahead, Pete.
Good morning, Chris. First of all, 2nd of August, major date. We're going to get this fuel levy come back on. It's going to hurt small business. It's going to hurt transport. It's going to hurt everyone again. Now, Jacinda Allen shouldn't have been the only Labor leader to resign. Albo should take a
hint?
A hint and just say, give it all away. Mate, we're in a lot of trouble in this country. But let me tell you, Pauline Hanson. Now, Chris, I attended a Pauline Hanson branch party meeting here the other night in Kempsey. The hall that we used to do that was packed.
Was it?
Not Could not get another person in. Now, best thing about the coming out of the meeting, apart from the beautiful fruitcake that someone's mum had made and a cup of tea, is these people are out here that are supporting One Nation are real people. So what happens, Chris, is people can't handle when real people support real people, and this is what these career politicians don't get.
Yeah.
The more shite they put on this woman, the more crap that they pile on her, the bigger she rises. It comes to the top, mate. It's unbelievable.
And doesn't it come to the top that the National Party and the Liberal Party are more interested in their own superiority than defeating Labor? Because if they were interested more in defeating the government, they would turn to their like-minded parties, like One Nation, like the Libertarians, and they would form some kind of bloc to remove the Labor Party. But they don't intend to do that.
Chris, it's just incredible. I spoke to Angus Taylor on your program, on this show, several weeks ago, and he kept saying, I'm going to fight for the country, I'm going to fight for the country. And I asked him on your show, I said, Angus, can you go and sit down with Pauline? Oh, yes, we're in debate, we're talking to them. They haven't spoken to them.
No.
This bloke is out there in the public, spruiking to people, telling them what great things we're going to do with the Nationals. Now, the other thing that people aren't aware of is they don't care about state or federal or whatever. People are more concerned about, are we going to get our country back? What's going to happen? All the big ticket items that they're not talking about.
Yep.
Albanese's government has had 3-4 months to get the fuel security right, still not done.
Well, we've got more fuel on standby than we've ever had, so it did frighten the producers out of them and get their act together.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, they need to get their act. But let's rubber stamp David Crisafulli's fuel exploration in Queensland and his gas. Let's rubber stamp it. Let's now look at what we need to do.
Why would the Environment Minister, Murray Watt, delay any of this? And that was his first reaction when David Crisafulli suggested we march on with oil and we march on refining our own. He had to put a block in the way because that was his first reaction.
No, because Murray Watt is a twat. Murray Watt has no idea what he's doing. Murray Watt is a career politician that has no concept of reality.
Yeah.
Murray Watt is the guy that is backing Penny Sharp, the Environment Minister of New South Wales, that's wrecking hundreds and hundreds of hectares on Walker High country, shooting brumbies in a national park. Who thinks that the koalas are going to save the tourism on the Mid-North Coast? That's Murray Watt.
Yeah, they're peas in the same pot, aren't they?
Should be a green. Murray Watt should be green. And David Shoebridge is another maniac that we've got running around the country, putting messages out on Facebook saying, we don't want the Americans here. Well, let me tell you, David, if you don't want the Americans here, give us another option.
Yes, what is the option? Indonesia? Peter, thank you very much for your comments. I want to go to Roger, who is just following the plight of a shark being followed by a drone. You're at South Curl, are you, Roger?
Yeah. Well, I'm at home now, but I was up to South Curl about an hour ago having my swim, and we were watching these probably about a dozen teenagers having a surf. They all came out of the water straight away, and we were wondering why there was a shark out there. And I thought, well, gee, I wonder why. I know that the beach has been patrolled by a drone, and so I went up to the drone operator, and he's watching the shark on the screen.
Oh, is he?
And I thought, well, where's the alarm? I mean, where's the signal that he picks up the shark on his monitor? There should be an alarm back to the...
Is there an alarm in existence in South Curl that they could use?
There is. Well, the beach, the Axel, is no longer patrolled this time of the year. The guys go off on...
of course.
...to break. But you'd think that it would be an automatic alarm that would go off. But so what I'm saying, there's incompetency there. I think they're making up $23 million for this. They've got there's a guy at one end of the beach in North Curl, one at the other end of the beach between...
But it's no good detecting a shark with a drone unless you're going to tell potential swimmers not to go in.
Precisely. And now, could you believe it, I went down to the beach. There's not even a sign on the beach saying don't enter, the shark sighted. So what is of this? What is the point of all this? Why are we spending $23 million on a system that... They can't work out anything.
Well, there's only 1/3 of the system. 1/3 of the system is the drone, but there are other parts to the system that you need to incorporate to make sure it's effective.
Well, you don't start it. You have all these things planned out, right? Knowing what the end is in mind before you even plan this.
Yeah.
You see the shark. There should be an alarm that notifies people.
And then signs telling people there has been a shark in the area, so that they can make a decision about whether they want to go in or not.
That's right. And I spoke to some of these kids. They're only about 16 years of age, and they thought, "Oh, there's a shark there, and I'll go home now." I thought, "Well, no." You might have been the fatality that had a DY a couple of months ago.
Yeah. You make a good point, Roger. You make a good point. I know it's off-season, but if you're going to be able to put a drone in at great cost to the New South Wales taxpayer, how about you complete the system and have a sign that you could put up if need be, or an alarm that goes off to tell potential swimmers to get the hell out of the water?
Well, to me, it shows that they haven't actually planned it properly, and I think you need to get onto that, because that's a big deal. I mean, the surf lifesaving, they haven't even figured it out. There should be a situation where, plan the whole thing so it does work.
Yeah, I'm hearing you, Roger. Thank you very much for raising it on the program.
Okay, thank you.
Good on you. There you go. Yeah, it's no good having a drone. A drone on its own is not going to prevent tragedy. It's not going to stop someone in an hour's time from going into the water when the shark comes back, if it's in the area. I don't get it. Kerry, good morning.
Good morning, Chris, and thanks very much for taking my call.
It's okay.
I was following this 3 days meeting at Adelaide with the Australian Labor Party, and everybody was expecting something to be discussed as far as the 25% tax on natural gas. Apparently, Ed Husick and a few others, plus unionists, they pushing for it. But apparently, the Prime Minister and his close ministers, they did not want to discuss this.
No, they quickly hosed it down before it became a debate.
Yeah. So my question is this, and it's not only the Prime Minister and his government at the moment, also the opposition. They're not talking much about it, and many people, of course, thinking what they hiding. They've done some special deal with these foreign companies.
Well, who knows? You might be right, Kerry.
That our country, according to Australian Institute, is missing 356 million per week, or 18.2 billion per year, if we impose this 25% tax.
Yeah.
And as you know, what other countries doing around the world. For instance, Norway, they got 2 trillion money in their special account from these taxes that they tax in their natural resources exports.
Yeah. The whole issue of gas is back to front. Now, when I say that, we tend to sell our gas cheaper to those we export to and sell it locally at a higher price. The system needs to be hugely reformed if we want to reverse that polarity, and it should be reversed as soon as we can. Kerry, for another day, it's an issue we should talk about. And Doug wants to talk about the drones and the shark. Go ahead, Doug.
Chris, you'd have to say that bloke was a narc. I mean, seriously, this is world first technology. If you look at it right, where are you going to put the signs? You know how long that beach is? There's not one access point to a beach. Where do you put the sign?
But what about an alarm? If you've got one, why aren't you sounding it?
Well, he may not have heard it. Why did those surfers get out of the water? Why did they get out?
I've got no idea. He sounds like he's a local, though, and if an alarm had gone off, he would have heard it.
Yeah, but he talked it all down. $23 million in the big scheme of things is absolutely peanuts. I mean, if you've got one bloke on the zone, what are you going to have people stand around saying, quick, run down the beach and put some signs out?
Okay, Doug, thank you very much for that. There's 2 different views of what's happening at South Curl this morning. I would have thought a sign that sat on the beach could be seen from at least the area that is usually frequented in terms of swimming. But anyway, we will take a break. After the break, I'm going to catch up with the Mayor of Forbes and an opportunity for all you people who are doing it tough in the city to take a financial gap year along the Lachlan River. The plot thickens in Spring Street. Gabrielle Williams has been appointed as the interim Labor leader. Why that would be the case, I'm not entirely sure. She is the Minister for Transport. I don't know whether there's going to be a vote down the track or whether it's a vote later in the day, but that's what's happened within that caucus meeting. Now, for many young Australians, the dream of getting ahead financially can feel further away than ever, can't it? With rising rents, housing costs, the cost of living making it harder to save, pay off your mortgage, or simply get some breathing space. But one regional council is pitching a different option, swapping the city grind for a year in the bush, with the promise of lower costs, career opportunities, better work-life balance, and a chance to get ahead financially before you return to the big smoke. Forbes Shire Mayor Phyllis Miller, OAM, joins me on the line right now. Mayor, thank you very much for your time.
Good morning, Chris.
Now, as an old Parks bloke who spent a lot of time in Forbes and called a bit of football there, spent too long in the pubs, and also had some fun in the Lachlan River, I couldn't think of a better place to spend a gap year than in Forbes. Could you?
No, honestly, Chris, we've spent a lot of time and money as a council getting our amenity and our services right in Forbes, and I believe we've got a lot to offer. It's much more affordable living out in rural regional areas, and I think that this is an opportunity for young people. We're sort of targeting the Western Sydney professionals, come out here for a year or two, and without a doubt they could own a home out here. After 2 years, they may want to stay, but it's going to put them in good stead to get back into the city market.
So compare some prices for us. Say, for instance, I live in Parramatta or some part of Western Sydney. How do the rents and how do the house prices differ in Forbes?
Well, if you're in Parramatta, you're looking at least $1 million to get a basic unit, let alone a home. Out here in Forbes, you can have a 4-bedroom home, 2-bathroom, on a very good lifestyle block, 800 to 1,000 square metres, for anywhere between 550 to 600.
Wow.
So that's a pretty good deal, I believe.
And the atmosphere, the ambience of Forbes is something to behold. We love Forbes. It's a great part of the world if you really want to, put your feet up and enjoy country life.
Sorry about my dog in the background there, Chris. But,
what sort of dog have you got?
Yeah, I've got a little King Charles Cavalier, and they bark at birds, so they're very annoying.
That's okay. But at least in Forbes you've got lots of birds, a lot more than what you'd find in the Big Smoke.
That's exactly right. But the big thing about this, Chris, we're the second highest growth area in the Central West. We're just behind Bathurst. So there's Bathurst and Forbes.
Wow.
We believe that this is a real good opportunity for us to really stake our claim on getting people to come out, enjoy our amenity and our lifestyle. We've got all of the services. We've got private and public education. We've got a fully functioning hospital. You can come and have your kids here. We've had 108,000 people have viewed the videos that we've launched at the beginning of the month. That is a big take-up. 97% of those people have never followed us before on socials.
How good is that? Now, where can I tell people to go to have a look at those videos?
Go straight to our website, Forbes Shire Council's website, and it's Live Forbes website, and register your interest in the Forbes Financial Gap Year program via the Forbes website, and our economic development team will reach out and help you connect with the local employment opportunities, real estate agents and community networks.
Okay, so you will go out of your way to try and link a person in Western Sydney with a job in Forbes?
Absolutely, or in the area within a 50k area around Forbes. So we're 50Ks, you're looking at 40 minutes as the maximum to drive to those jobs. There's 100 advertised jobs within that 50K radius. So
you're not going to fill any jobs in Parks, are you, Mayor?
We're going to pinch them from anywhere, Chris.
I understand the local feeling between the two towns, although you are twin towns. Now, okay,
Yeah.
so that's what other help will you give someone who has to make a decision about making such a considerable move?
We have got incentivised programs that we will talk to those people about to them.
What do you mean?
Well, we incentivise people if someone wants to buy. We've got a housing estate. We're happy to do whatever we can to make it easier for people to get into that housing estate. So we'll wait and see. Every person or every situation will be treated as it needs to be, and it will go before council. It will be very public about what we do and what we don't do for people, but we are determined to share our lifestyle with Sydney people and let them know that there is a life outside of Sydney.
What about cost of living? For people in Sydney, it's overwhelming at the moment. Why would it be any different in Forbes?
Oh, you haven't got the travel expenses. You haven't got the mortgage expenses.
The tollways.
Much lower. Rent out here, you'll get something really decent. You'll get a 4-bedder for around the 600 mark, 650. So,
and no tollways.
No tollways.
Yeah.
How good's that?
Yeah, fantastic.
And we've got a 10-kilometre walk around the lake, which is incredible. And we do water skiing here in town in the summer. It's just it's a top place. Come out and visit. Come and talk to us.
I can only push people to at least look at the video and consider this, because having spent time in the bush, it was one of the most interesting and pleasurable experiences of my life to spend time in places like Parkes, Forbes and Bendigo later in my life. Fantastic. Now, I'll let you go. All the very best. Thank you very much for talking to us today, and I hope this works a treat and that you can get some benefit out of it as a council and a local community too.
Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you.
Forbes Shire Mayor Phyllis Miller, OAM, would you consider heading to the bush? I bet I've got plenty of listeners who made the big trek to the bush, maybe for a year, maybe for 2 years, and have stayed there forever. It's interesting, isn't it? I bet I've got people who could tell us what that was like, making the shift from the big smoke to the bush. We've got lots of people listening through 2PK who live in Forbes now. I wonder whether you could tell us, and especially indicate to those people in Western Sydney, how good it would be to make the move. Now, I moved from Western Sydney as a kid. I was at university, and I left Mum, took the car, went to Moree, then went to Parkes, worked there in radio, and I tell you, it was where I grew up, basically, and where I had enormous fun, where I learned about community and basically how to have a good time and companionship, all out in the bush in that great rural environment. You can't beat it. And I've got to say, it was far better than living in Western Sydney at the time. But maybe you can tell us all about that. Give us a call on 13 12 69 and give a few people who are listening a bit of a nudge, a bit of encouragement to make the move to the bush, at least for a year or two, to save. Don't face the cost of living. Don't face the travel times, not the tolls, all of that. Spend less money on accommodation and then get back to the city if you want and resume your life a little bit ahead of the curve. It's not a bad idea, is it? Now, Norwegian Cruise Line's balcony flash sale is on now. This is only going until the 30th of July, so you don't have much time. You can book a balcony stateroom or above and enjoy free at sea half price. For just $28 per person per day, enjoy NCL's ultimate upgrade package. Now, if you're a smart cruiser, you know about the packages you can get on a cruise ship and how you've got to get the best you can, because you need premium beverage packages, you need the specialty dining options, the excursion credits to see the places that you dock at, and, of course, Wi-Fi to keep connected. You can choose from select sailings across so many destinations right around Europe, Australia, South Pacific, Asia and beyond, all at 50% off. You won't hear a 50% off deal anywhere this year. It's quite incredible. Don't wait. Offer ends July 30. Secure your dream cruise today with a reduced deposit as well, by the way. So to book, contact your travel agent today. Visit the website. Have a good look for yourself. ncl.com. Conditions apply. Norwegian Cruise Line. It's different out here. To summarise what's been going on in this caucus room in Melbourne, they have decided that under the rules instituted in 2013 by Kevin Rudd, the idea that Ben Carroll is challenged by Sonia Kilkenny cannot be sorted out in that caucus room today. It has to go to the entire membership of the Victorian Labor Party. So you're talking about branches after branches having a say in just about every town before a vote can go down in the caucus. This is part of Kevin Rudd's 2013 reform to enable leaders not to easily be blasted from leadership. So Ben Carroll, Sonia Kilkenny being the Attorney General and on Jacinta Allen's support team, she's decided to put her hand up against Ben Carroll. It wasn't automatic. If it was automatic and he was handed the role, it wouldn't need to go to the membership. But for some reason, the Allen camp has decided to put a fly in the ointment, and Sonia Kilkenny is the fly. And so this is not going to be decided for weeks, probably 4 weeks. And in the meantime, they've elected Gabrielle Williams as the interim Labor leader. So the Labor government, the government in Victoria, is in this pause mode until they can sort out who should lead and who should run the state, which will take 4 weeks, which when you consider they have to go to the polls in November is not long at all. We are at the end of July. So this is not going to be sorted out until the end of August. And then you've got 2 and a bit months before they face an election. What chaos for the Labor Party of Victoria. Oh, dear. G'day, Nick.
Hello, Chris. Look, it's a pity that Mayor of Forbes didn't tell you how tight the rental market is out there.
Oh, are you in Forbes?
No, I'm in Milson's Point.
You're in Milson's Point, a long way away from Forbes. So tell me about how tight the rental market is in a place like Forbes.
Well, according to the HTAG analytics, it's 0.9% available properties for rent out there. So she's telling everybody, oh, you can get a 4-bedroom house out here for $600. Are you kidding? You'd be sleeping in your car till one came up like that.
Well, that's interesting. That number that you have just raised, I think, is very similar to the vacancy rate in Sydney, is it not?
That's right. I think it might be a little bit even lower than what they've got in Sydney. What we've got here in Sydney now, it says it goes up to 3%, but come on, look, it might be a great place to live, but give us the facts, please, lady. Don't tell us how wonderful it is. We go out there and there's nowhere to rent.
All right, that's interesting. That is interesting. I'm just looking at some properties in Forbes. You can live on Calary Road, Forbes, in a 3-bedroom house at $420 per week. That's still a lot cheaper than Sydney. Nick?
Oh, it certainly is, and I'm surprised that there's one even listed.
Well, now there's another one in Elliott Street, Forbes, $400 a week. A 4-bedroom house in Powter Street, Forbes, $550 a week. Another one in Calary Road, Forbes, $330 a week. One in Berkeley Street, Forbes, at $500 a week. In McDonald Street, Forbes, $465 a week for a 3-bedroomer. They're just 3 bedrooms.
I'll get the next Pioneer bus out there.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you very much. The story is always somewhere in the middle, I've always found. Owen in Botany. Go right ahead, Owen.
Hey, Chris.
G'day.
Mate, before you went on leave, you had 2 guys on that were doing a podcast called Catching Evil.
Yeah. Mark Llewellyn and his mate, yeah.
Yep, I've got to say, because it was about the Wanda murders. That's why I listened to all 27. But what got me, I couldn't believe that Christopher Wilde, who was from Australia, went to America. He was worse than Ted Bundy.
Yeah.
Did the people?
Well, not not specifically worse than Ted Bundy, but not far away from the number of victims Ted Bundy had.
That's right. And when I used to live in a place called Osgood, Indiana, back in the 80s, and I remember that on the radio when he got shot up near the Canadian border, an Australian race car driver. But I tell you what, if no one's listened to it, it's worth listen. I couldn't believe it. And the other thing that got me too with it, Chris, is that Christopher Wilde's parents moved up to Sawtell. Now, we know how many unsolved missing people murders are up on the Pacific Highway. They've been trying to blame Ivan Milat. I wouldn't be surprised if this Christopher Wilde, when he's come back to see his parents, he's done a few when he's been back here.
Well, that was his MO. He would work along the beach areas, stalking young women, taking them under his wing and abusing them.
Exactly. And the sad thing about when you listen to this podcast, I know the police are under pressure a lot of the time, but in the early days, there was a lot of mistakes. Mistakes, if they done it right, half these girls be still alive in America now.
Yeah, well, this is what Mark said to me, and so did Andy Byrne. I had both of them in the studio just before I left on this Catching Evil podcast. I'm glad you had a chance to listen to it because I found it compelling, which is why I had the pair in the studio.
Oh, it was unreal. And Chris, please get more people on like that because I tell you what, I love things about Australia. And I'll tell you another one is about that girl 50 years ago down at that beach in Wollongong. I can't think of it, the name of the beach, but it was done by the BBC.
Right. You're stretching my memory there.
Very well.
And who was the victim?
It was a young 3-year-old girl. She come over here with her parents as 10-pound poms.
Right.
And she'd been in the country for 3 months. Her brother...
Oh, Cheryl Grimmer. Cheryl Grimmer. I know the one you're talking about.
Yeah, I actually went down and saw the memorial for her the other day, but, God, he still hasn't got over what happened. He said he should have just walked in and got her from the female toilet.
Yeah.
But because he went back to get his mother, come back, and he was gone. And the other sad thing is they know who did it.
Yeah.
But because the kid was 17 when he was interviewed, no solicitor, no guardian, so it's not worth a cracker in today's world.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's not related to the Wanda Beach murderer, but it is one of those unsolved crimes which could be solved if it weren't for the passage of time, the fact that he was 17 years of age. That's such a terrible pity when it comes to justice being served. Owen, thank you very much for that. You've obviously got a particular interest in true crime.
Exactly. Yeah, I listened to that other guy, Adam, someone from Melbourne, about the Mr. Cruel murders and kidnaps with young girls.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about, Adam.
Or someone?
Is it? I'll think of it in a second. Adam Shand. It is. That's right, Adam Shand.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, he used to be at Channel 9. Yeah, he tells a decent story. He knows how to bring the circumstances and the storytelling together so that you understand what the evidence is. He does a great job, Adam Shand. Thank you, Owen. Appreciate it.